He lived in a house so big that even his footsteps sounded lonely. The walls were clean, the floors were shiny, and everything was perfectly placed. Yet nothing felt warm. Every day started the same way. A silent breakfast served on a long table. A driver waiting outside. Assistants reminding him of meetings. His world was full of money, but empty of real laughter. From the outside, people thought he had the perfect life. He owned companies. He wore expensive suits. He could buy anything he wanted. But deep inside, he felt like something was missing. He would stare at his phone some evenings, scrolling through photos of places he had visited, people he barely remembered, in rooms that looked beautiful but felt cold. Across the city, her world looked very different. She lived in a small, worn-down apartment with 2 children. The walls had cracks, and sometimes the water stopped running. But the room was filled with noise, giggles, and little footsteps. Her mornings started not with silence, but with alarms, crying children, and rushing around trying to get everyone ready for school. She didn't have time to feel lonely. She had lunches to pack, clothes to wash, and shoes to fix when they broke. Life was not easy. Her husband had passed away years ago, and most of her family had turned away from her. Friends slowly disappeared when they realized she needed help more than she could give. Still, every morning, she tied her children's shoes with gentle hands. She brushed their hair with care. She kissed their foreheads and told them they were strong, smart, and loved. One day, their worlds touched without them planning it. The man's car stopped at a small roadside stall. It was a hot afternoon, and the driver had stopped to fix a tire. The man stepped outside, uncomfortable with the dust and noise. He looked around, unsure what to do with time he wasn't used to controlling. That's when he noticed her. She was standing nearby, holding one child's hand while the other one leaned against her leg. She was buying fruit from a street cart. Her clothes were simple. Her face looked tired. But when she spoke to the fruit seller, she smiled in a way that felt honest. Suddenly, one of her children dropped a bag, and the fruit rolled across the road. Cars slowed down. People watched. She moved quickly, trying to collect everything before traffic picked up again, without thinking much. The man stepped forward and helped pick up the fruit. It surprised him how natural it felt. Their hands brushed for a moment. She looked up at him with a soft, grateful smile. "Thank you," she said. Those 2 words stayed in his mind longer than they should have. He went back to his car, but he kept looking through the window. He saw her give a piece of fruit to her child and wipe their dusty hands with the edge of her scarf. He noticed how gently she spoke to them, even though she looked exhausted. That night, he couldn't sleep. He wasn't thinking about business deals or meetings. He was thinking about a smile that cost nothing, about a thank you that felt real, about a woman who had clearly been tired but still found the strength to smile for her kids in the days that followed. He found himself asking his driver to take longer routes. He wanted the car to pass through that same street again. He told himself it was just curiosity, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. When he saw her again, she was walking with her children toward the small school at the corner of the road. She held their hands tightly, stopping at every step to make sure they were safe. He watched from inside the car. He felt something strange in his chest, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Later that day, he parked his car farther away and walked toward the same fruit stall. He bought fruit he didn't even want, just to stand there. Just to feel part of that ordinary world for a few minutes. She noticed him. She looked curious, but not rude. She gave a simple nod. He nodded back. He wanted to say something. He wanted to ask her name. He wanted to know more. But words felt heavy. He wasn't used to talking without a plan, without control. Over the next few weeks, these small moments became part of his day. He would see her in the mornings, sometimes tired, sometimes smiling, sometimes rushing. She never complained. She never showed anger in front of her children. Even when money was tight, she managed to make their little world feel safe. He learned from the fruit seller that she worked 2 small jobs: cleaning houses in the morning, packing items in a small factory in the evening. Still, she never sent her kids away. She never left them behind. One afternoon, he saw something that stayed with him. Her younger child tripped and fell. The child cried loudly. People nearby only glanced for a second and looked away. But she dropped everything, sat on the dusty ground, and held her child tightly. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're strong." She kissed scraped knees and lifted the child as if holding something precious. The man felt his throat tighten. He realized that she had what he never did. Real love in her daily life. And for the first time in many years, he felt something inside him change. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It wasn't just interest, it was respect. He didn't know her story yet. He didn't know her pain or her past, but he knew one thing clearly. He wanted to see her again. And this simple beginning was about to change his life in ways he could never imagine. He began to notice her life in small pieces, like someone slowly putting together a quiet story. He didn't follow her. He didn't want to frighten her. He simply let his car pass by at the same time each morning so he could see her walk her children to school. What stayed with him wasn't her tired face. It was her calm voice. No matter how rushed the morning was, she never pulled her children roughly or spoke in anger. One day, it started to rain without warning. Many people ran for shelter, but she didn't. She removed her small scarf and held it above her children's heads. Her own hair and shoulders got wet, but she didn't seem to care. She walked slowly, careful that they wouldn't slip. The man watched from inside his car, feeling something heavy and warm in his chest. He had seen many women in his life. Some wanted money, some wanted attention, some wanted a name to carry. But this woman didn't look like she wanted anything from the world. She only wanted her children to be safe. That thought scared him a little. He wasn't used to feeling things he couldn't control. A few days later, he stepped out of the car near the small street where she lived. He walked slowly, trying to look like a normal man on a normal day. No polished shoes, no bodyguards, no loud phone calls. He bought tea from a small stall and waited. She walked by with her children. She gave him a polite smile as she passed. He could feel his heart beat faster. That surprised him. He spoke without thinking too much. "Your children are very well behaved," he said. Softly, she looked slightly surprised but not uncomfortable. "Thank you," she replied. "They are my whole world." He didn't know what to say after that, but he felt lighter just hearing her voice. From that day, short conversations started. Simple words. Nothing deep. Nothing heavy. He learned that she never complained about her life. She never blamed anyone. Even when he asked if things were hard, she would just shrug and say, "We manage." Behind that small sentence, there was a lot of strength. He began helping from a distance. When the fruit seller looked worried about money, he quietly paid extra. When the tea seller's stove broke, he helped replace it without saying who he was. He didn't tell anyone. He just wanted the street to feel warmer, not because he was rich, but because being near her made him kinder. One afternoon, he saw her sitting on the steps outside her building. Her head leaned against the wall and her eyes were closed. Her youngest child was sleeping on her lap. She looked tired. More tired than usual, he hesitated but walked closer. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She opened her eyes and quickly straightened herself. "I'm fine," she said, even though her face said otherwise. He didn't push. He just sat on the step next to her for a few moments, giving her silence instead of questions. That moment felt more honest than many conversations he had had in his life. Later, he learned from another neighbor that she slept only a few hours each night. Cleaning work early in the morning and factory work late in the evening had taken over her life. Still, she had never missed a school meeting, never missed a birthday, never missed reading to her. Children before sleep, the man's world began to feel different. He started arriving late to his fancy dinners. He cared less about loud parties. He stopped talking so much about money. His friends noticed the change, but he didn't care. They asked him if he had fallen in love. He didn't answer because he didn't feel like it. It was love yet. It felt deeper, quieter, safer. One day, Something happened that made him see her in a new way. It was late afternoon. He saw her standing near a small grocery store, talking to the shop owner. Her shoulders were tense. She held a small list in her hand. Her hand shook slightly. The shop owner walked away, shaking his head. She sighed and folded the paper slowly. Her face wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was calm. She turned to leave. One of her children tugged at her hand and whispered something. She bent down and smiled softly. "Not today," she said. "We will manage." There were no tears, no drama, just quiet strength. The man felt a sharp pain in his chest. He wanted to help. He wanted to fix everything. But he knew if he walked up with money, it would feel wrong. It would feel like he was looking down on her, and he never wanted to feel that way about her, so he stayed still that night. He sat alone in his huge house and thought about his own childhood. He had grown up with cold walls and busy parents. Toys, tutors, travel, but no real feeling of being held when he was scared. No warm voice telling him everything would be okay. He realized something simple and painful. He had money. She had warmth. She had what he had spent his life looking for without knowing it. The next morning, he walked toward the school corner again. He saw her tying a loose shoelace, her fingers moving gently. Her child smiled up at her with complete trust. He understood. Something in that moment, he wasn't just watching her life anymore. He was slowly becoming part of it, even if she didn't know it yet. And inside his heart, a quiet promise began to grow. He would never forget this strength, and he would protect it in his own way. Without breaking her pride, he started noticing small things about her life that he had never thought about before. How early she woke up, how carefully she measured her money, how she smiled at her children, even when she had no reason to. Every detail made him respect her more. He began understanding what it meant to live with courage every single day. One afternoon, saw her struggling with bags heavier than she could carry. Without thinking, he stepped forward to help. At first, she hesitated. She didn't like to accept help, but he simply smiled and took a bag from her hand. "Thank you," she said softly, her eyes cautious. "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "I just want to help." That simple exchange made him feel closer to her than he had felt with anyone in years. He realized that helping didn't always have to be about money. Sometimes it was just about being present, being there when someone needed a hand. A word, or even just a quiet moment. Days turned into weeks. He started arranging small things in her life without her knowing. A repairman showed up at her apartment one day to fix a leaking pipe. The bill was quietly paid. Her children's shoes got replaced after they wore out without her asking. Sometimes he even left little gifts, like school supplies, on her doorstep. Always small, always thoughtful, always without a name attached. But his heart grew heavier as his feelings grew. He wanted to tell her who he really was, but he feared it might ruin everything. What if she saw him only as a rich man, not as someone who genuinely cared? What if his money became more important than the respect he had for her strength? One evening, he found her sitting on a park bench with her children. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the ground. One of her children looked worried, clutching a small notebook. "I don't understand this homework," the child said. She looked at the page and smiled. "It's okay. Let's try together. You can do it. I will help." He watched her guide the child through the problems, never showing frustration, never raising her voice. Her patience was endless, and her love for her children was clear in every gesture. He felt something unfamiliar, admiration mixed with longing, a kind of sadness because he had never known anyone like her. As he observed them, a thought struck him. She was not asking for anything from the world, not even from him. She didn't need saving. She didn't need someone to fix her life. She only needed respect, love, and honesty. That realization changed the way he felt about his own life. For the first time, he understood that wealth meant little compared to courage and dignity. Then, something unexpected happened. One of her children fell sick. Not seriously, but enough to worry her. She stayed awake all night, taking care of the child, worrying about school, about work, about bills. He watched from a distance, torn between wanting to help and wanting to respect her independence. Finally, he decided to act. He arranged for medical care and covered the costs quietly. No note, no explanation. Just help. The next morning he saw her leaving the clinic with the child smiling and healthy. She looked tired but relieved. He felt joy, but it was bittersweet. She had no idea who had helped her. He couldn't bring himself to reveal it yet. Days passed, and their small conversations continued. They spoke about school, about the weather, about small victories in life. He noticed that she laughed often, even in the middle of struggles. That laughter became something he longed to hear every day. One rainy evening, he offered to give her and the children a ride home from the park. She hesitated. She didn't like being a burden, but he insisted politely. "Please." "I don't mind," he said. She looked at him, searching for any sign of hidden motives, but all she saw was genuine kindness. She finally nodded. The ride was quiet at first. The children chattered about small things, pointing at puddles, at cars passing by. She smiled occasionally, glancing at him, trying to gauge his intentions. He kept his eyes on the road, but felt the weight of the moment. This was the first time he was truly near her without secrecy. Finally, as he dropped them off at their apartment, he spoke softly. "I want you to know, I admire you. Not for what you have, but for who you are. Your strength, your love for your children, it's more than anyone could ask for." She looked at him, a mixture of surprise and wariness in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "But life doesn't need admiration. It needs action." He smiled gently. "Okay. And I've tried to help in my own way." She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't ask for names. She just nodded and went inside. He stood there for a moment, watching her close the door behind her. He realized that admiration alone wasn't enough. If he wanted to be part of her life, he would have to earn trust, and he would have to do it without taking away her independence. The next few weeks, he found himself thinking more about her children than himself. He thought about their school, their meals, their little worries. He wanted to support them in ways she would accept, quietly, without interfering. He began sending books, school supplies, small gifts that would help their studies. He never left his name. He simply left them at the door or with neighbors he trusted. Through these actions, he began to understand what love really meant. It wasn't about grand gestures. It wasn't about gifts or money. It was about being present, about seeing the world through someone else's eyes, about caring in silence and respecting dignity. One evening, as he sat alone in his empty house, he realized something that both thrilled and frightened him. He had fallen for her. Not for her beauty, not for her situation, not even for her kindness. He had fallen for her strength, for her ability to stand tall when the world had turned against her, for her love that never wavered even in the hardest moments. He knew one thing. He could never reveal his true feelings until he was sure she would see him as a person, not as a rich man with a hidden agenda. Until then, he would continue helping quietly, watching and learning. And deep inside, he made another promise. If there was ever a chance to be part of her life, he would never take away her pride. He would never let her feel that she owed him anything. He would approach with patience, honesty, and respect, and hope that one day she would allow him to be closer. Until that day, he would remain a silent guardian, watching from afar, learning from her courage, and letting the quiet bond between them grow. He had never planned to reveal who he really was. The truth felt heavy, complicated, and potentially dangerous for the connection they had built. But life has a way of forcing decisions that people hope they can avoid. It started on a busy morning. He had arranged for some help at her apartment, quietly, a repairman to fix the broken heater, some groceries delivered. But the repairman accidentally mentioned that everything had been paid for already. She looked at him in confusion. I don't understand," she said. "Who did this?" He felt a pang in his chest. She deserved honesty, not mystery. He hesitated for a moment, then decided it was time. "I did," he said quietly. Her eyes widened. There was a pause, heavy and tense. She looked straight at him, not trusting the words, but unable to ignore the truth in his calm voice. "You," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "I wanted to help without hurting your pride. I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything." She took a step back. "Why? Why would you do this?" "Because I respect you," he said. "Because I see your strength. And because I care." For a long moment, she said nothing. Her children watched silently from the side, sensing the tension but not understanding it fully. She had been through a life that taught her to be careful, to never trust too quickly, to rely on herself above all else. And here was a man, wealthy, powerful, and unknown to her, stepping into her world, claiming he had no other reason than care. Her first reaction was anger. "You think you can just fix everything?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "You think money can solve what life hasn't?" He shook his head. "No, I don't think that. I only wanted to help. I wanted to make things a little easier." She looked at him for a long time. The quiet around them felt heavy, almost suffocating. She remembered every person who had come into her life with promises. Every person who had tried to help but ended up controlling her. She couldn't afford to trust blindly. She couldn't let her children feel betrayed. "I can take care of my kids myself," she said firmly. "I've done it for years. I don't need anyone telling me what to do or giving me gifts to feel grateful." He understood. He nodded slowly, careful not to interrupt. "I know. And I never wanted to take that away from you. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see how hard you work. I see how strong you are, and I want to be part of your life if you let me. Nothing else. No conditions. No expectations." She stared at him, trying to read his face, searching for hidden motives. She wanted to believe him, but experience had taught her caution. She stepped inside her apartment, motioning for him to wait. The children ran to their rooms. Leaving her alone with him in the living room, she finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I appreciate what you did. I really do. But trust isn't built in a few days. It's built over years. And you can't just appear and expect me to accept everything. I have to protect my children. I have to protect them from disappointment. From people who come and go." He nodded, understanding that she wasn't rejecting him entirely. She was protecting what mattered most, her children and her own sense of dignity. "I understand. I can wait. I'll wait as long as it takes. I only want to be honest now. That's all I ask." Over the next few days, the silence between them was heavy but not hostile. He continued to watch over them quietly, giving her space, letting her see that his care was genuine and not about control. He didn't interfere. He didn't force himself into her daily life. He only observed, only helped in ways that didn't compromise her independence. One afternoon, she faced another challenge. Her youngest child had a small accident at school, scraping an arm. She rushed to the school, her heart pounding, the world around her fading. The child was in pain, frightened, and she held them close, whispering calm words. The man happened to arrive nearby. It's not because he was following her, but because he had an errand in the area. He saw her kneel beside the child, checking the wound, brushing away tears. Her focus was complete, her love unshakable. He stepped forward gently. "Do you need help?" he asked softly. She looked up, startled, then shook her head. "No, I've got this," she said, determination in her voice. He stayed a few steps away, giving her space, but ready to assist, if she asked. He realized that true support wasn't about doing things for her. It was about being there when she needed it, without overshadowing her. After the incident, she looked at him with a small, hesitant smile. It was not the warmth of full trust yet, but it was a start. She was beginning to see that his care was consistent, patient, and respectful. A week later, she invited him to a small gathering with neighbors. She had prepared a modest meal, and her children were excited. She didn't ask him for anything. She didn't explain why he was invited. She simply allowed him to be part of a small corner of her life. During the gathering, he watched her interact with the neighbors, with her children, and with the people who had supported her over the years. She moved gracefully, her laughter natural, her patience endless. He realized that he had not been watching just one woman. He had been witnessing a mother, a leader, a survivor. He felt humbled. For the first time, he didn't feel superior. He felt equal. And it was that equality that made him want to stay in her life even more. But that night, as he drove home, he knew the hardest part was still ahead. She didn't fully trust him yet. She didn't know if he would leave when things became difficult, and he knew that love alone would not change that. Only time, honesty, respect could. He also realized something else. Falling for her meant accepting her entire life, her struggles, her joys, her children, and her fears. It wasn't just about admiration anymore. It was about commitment, patience, and understanding. He made another silent promise as he sat alone in his large, quiet home. He would wait. He would never force himself into her life. He would continue to show that his intentions were genuine, not with grand gestures, but with consistent care. And when the time came, if she allowed him, he would reveal all of himself, not just as a helper, but as someone who truly wanted to walk beside her, not ahead or above. Meanwhile, she began noticing subtle changes in her life. Things became a little easier without anyone asking. Small problems were solved quietly. Little comforts appeared without explanation. She felt a mix of gratitude and suspicion. Something about this man was different. He didn't seek attention. He didn't demand anything in return. He simply existed as a quiet, protective presence. She didn't know how to feel about him. Her life had taught her caution, but her heart slowly began to soften. She realized that not all people were like the ones who had hurt her in the past. Some genuinely cared. And perhaps, just perhaps, this man was one of those rare people. As days turned into weeks, a fragile connection grew between them. Not love yet, but trust in its earliest, most delicate form. He continued to watch, to wait, to understand. She continued to notice, to question, to wonder. And in that quiet space, something meaningful began to bloom. A connection built not on wealth, not on grand gestures, but on respect, honesty, the quiet recognition of strength and resilience. He didn't know how this story would end. She didn't know if she could ever fully trust him. But one thing was certain. Their lives had intertwined in a way that could not be undone. And sometimes, the slow, careful unfolding of trust was stronger than the rush of passion or the thrill of immediate love. Time passed slowly, but it was in those small, quiet moments that life truly changed. He continued to respect her space and never forced himself into her world. She continued to notice his presence, his care, and his patience, even if she did not fully understand it yet. Their connection grew, not in grand declarations, but in small, consistent actions. One morning, he walked past her apartment as usual and noticed her standing outside with a worried expression. Her youngest child had a school project that had gone missing, and the stress showed clearly on her face. She bent down to speak softly to her child, trying to calm the tears and the frustration. He approached quietly, holding a replacement project he had arranged earlier with the teacher. "I think this belongs to you," he said softly. Her eyes widened. She wanted to refuse, but she could see no trick in his calm demeanor. She took it, hands trembling slightly, and whispered, "Thank you." He only nodded and walked away, giving her space. It was a small moment, but for her it was a demonstration of his understanding and respect. She began to realize that his care was not about control, and it was not about money. It was about seeing her struggles, honoring her strength, and offering help without strings attached. Over time, their conversations became more personal. They shared small stories about their childhoods, their hopes, and their little fears. He learned about her past, the loss of her husband, the challenges of raising children alone, and the endless effort it took to keep them safe and happy. She learned about his past, a lonely childhood in a wealthy family, the feeling of always having possessions but never affection, and the emptiness that came with a life full of material things but little emotional warmth. One evening, as the sun set and the streets glowed with orange light, he walked her home after visiting a neighbor nearby. Her children ran ahead, laughing and chasing one another. She walked beside him, her hands full of groceries, and he offered to help carry them. "Are you sure?" she asked, a small smile on her lips. "Yes," he he said softly. "I want to help, not because you need me, but because I care." She paused and looked at him. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to protect herself from him. She could see that his words were true. She could see that his presence had never been about control or power. It had been about respect, understanding, and patience. That night, he returned home, feeling a warmth he had never experienced before. He realized that he no longer wanted to be just a distant helper. He wanted to be part of her life, to walk beside her and her children, to share in the small joys and challenges. But he knew that he could not rush it. Trust had to grow at its own pace. Weeks later, an unexpected challenge arose. Her eldest child faced a difficult situation at school, bullying from classmates that had left the child withdrawn and scared. She stayed awake for nights, worrying, thinking of ways to protect and support the child. She did everything she could, offering comfort, listening to fears, and teaching courage. He noticed her quiet struggles and offered small gestures of support, a book on courage, a letter of encouragement from someone she admired, extra help when needed. She accepted them without realizing they came from him, and slowly, her burden became lighter. It was during this time that she began to notice him differently. She began to understand that he did not help her out of pity, nor did he expect anything in return. His care was steady, consistent, and patient. She realized that he admired her strength, her resilience, and her love for her children, not her situation. One evening, she invited him to dinner at her apartment. It was a simple meal, nothing fancy, but it was full of warmth and laughter. The children were excited, sharing stories of their day, and she watched him interact with them naturally, without pretense. He listened to them, laughed with them, and even helped with homework, showing patience and kindness. It was in that moment that she saw him truly as part of their lives, not as an outsider or a savior, but as someone who respected and cared for them deeply. She realized that love could be quiet, steady, and gentle, not just grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Time passed, and the bond between them grew stronger. He never tried to take control, never tried to overshadow her efforts. He was simply there, steady, patient, and understanding. She began to let her guard down, allowing herself to trust him, to rely on him in small ways, and to see him as someone who could walk beside her through life's challenges. One rainy afternoon, when the children were home from school, they sat together in the living room watching the drops hit the window. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling safe and understood. For the first time in years, she did not feel alone. She knew that no matter what challenges came their way, there was someone who truly saw her strength and loved her for it. He held her hand gently, not as a possession, but as a promise. A promise that he would never try to control her, never try to replace her, and never try to overshadow the life she had built with her children. He would walk beside her, share in her joys and struggles, and respect the life she had fought so hard to create. Over time, their relationship grew into something beautiful, not built on wealth or power, but on mutual respect, understanding, and love. He learned what it meant to be part of a family, to care for children not as a duty but as a privilege, and to love someone for their strength and resilience rather than their beauty or circumstances. She learned that not all love is fleeting, not all people are selfish, and that sometimes the quiet, patient presence of someone who truly cares can change a life in ways money and power never could. Together, they built a life based on trust, patience, and mutual respect. He continued to support her and her children in ways that honored her independence. She continued to grow in confidence and happiness, knowing that someone truly saw and valued her strength. And in that life, they found something rare, a love that was steady, kind, and unshakable. A love built not on wealth or convenience, but on understanding, respect, the quiet recognition of each other's hearts. The children felt it too. They felt the warmth, the safety, and the genuine care that surrounded them. Their laughter grew louder, their confidence stronger, and their sense of home fuller than ever before. In the end, it was not a story of rescue, nor a story of grand gestures. It was a story of two people finding each other through patience, respect, and quiet acts of love. It was a story of a man who saw strength and courage in a woman, and a woman who learned to trust and accept care without losing her dignity. And most importantly, it was a story of love that grew slowly, deeply, and beautifully, the kind of love that could weather life's storms, celebrate its joys, and stand strong in the face of every challenge. They didn't need wealth to make their life together happy. They didn't need grand gestures or dramatic events to prove their love. They needed respect, patience, honesty, and a willingness to walk together, hand in hand. Through life's ordinary and extraordinary moments, in that quiet human way, they found happiness. They found love, and they found a life that for the first time felt complete. Life continued quietly, but every day brought small moments that deepened the connection between them. He had become part of her life, not as someone who tried to fix everything, but as someone who respected her strength and stood beside her through the small and large challenges alike. One morning, he noticed her struggling with a new problem. The children's school had announced an extra assignment, and she needed extra supplies she could barely afford. She walked through the market, counting coins and weighing options carefully. He watched her from a distance, realizing how much she sacrificed daily to provide for her children without complaining, without making a scene. He arranged for the supplies to appear at her doorstep the next day. There was no note, no fanfare, just the items she needed. When she saw them, her first instinct was confusion, then gratitude. She didn't know who had done it, but she accepted it as a small blessing, a little relief in her busy life. He watched from a distance, feeling quietly proud, but not wanting recognition. Over time, children began to notice his presence more. They saw how he treated their mother with respect and kindness. They saw how he never interfered unnecessarily, but always offered help when it was needed. Slowly, they started to trust him. Their laughter grew louder around him. And small conversations started, questions about his day, his thoughts, and even small jokes. He realized that being accepted by the children was just as important as being accepted by her. He had come into their lives not to take over, but to be a gentle presence. And they slowly understood that. One afternoon, they all went to a small park together. The children ran ahead, playing in the grass and laughing freely. She watched them, a soft smile on her lips, while he walked beside her quietly. There was no need for words. The simple comfort of walking together, sharing the same moment, was enough. She spoke after a while, her voice thoughtful. "I never imagined life could feel like this again," she said softly. He looked at her, curious. "Like what?" "Safe, calm, happy, even in small ways," she said. "I've spent so many years just surviving. I forgot how it felt to have quiet joy in life." He didn't respond immediately. He simply smiled, understanding that this was exactly what he had hoped to give. Not wealth, not control, but the feeling that life could be shared and gentle. Even amidst challenges, as days turned into weeks, they faced more challenges together. One of her children fell ill with a high fever, and she stayed awake all night caring for them. He was there quietly, offering comfort, arranging medical help, and ensuring they had what they needed. She accepted the help now, not as charity, but as support from someone who genuinely cared. Through this, she began to understand the depth of his feelings. He was no longer a distant figure quietly helping. He was a partner, a supporter, and a protector. Not someone who sought to control. Someone who respected her boundaries and admired her courage. One evening, as they sat together after the children had gone to sleep, he spoke softly. "I know life hasn't been easy for you. I know you've faced so much, yet you continue to stand tall. I want you to know that I'm here for you always. Not to change you, not to take over, but to walk with you." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of emotion, surprise, gratitude, and a deep, cautious hope. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say nothing," he said gently. "I don't need words. I only need to be here, beside you." In the following months, their relationship continued to grow naturally. She started relying on him in ways that felt comfortable, asking for advice on small matters, accepting help when it truly mattered, and trusting him with her thoughts and feelings. He never pushed, never demanded, and never tried to hurry the bond. He knew that real love was patient and gentle, and he let it grow at its own pace. Her children became more open with him, sharing their school experiences, small worries, and little victories. He listened, laughed, and encouraged them, showing patience and kindness. Through his actions, he became a quiet role model, someone who demonstrated care without judgment. One weekend, they all went to a small picnic. It wasn't luxurious or grand, just simple sandwiches, fresh fruit, and a blanket on the grass. The children ran freely, laughing and chasing each other. She watched him interact with them, helping when needed, but never taking control. She realized that he had become more than a presence in their lives. He had become family in a way that felt natural and safe. That evening, as the sun set and the sky glowed with warm colors, she turned to him. I'm beginning to understand what it means to trust someone completely," she said softly. He smiled gently. "And I'm grateful for that. I've waited patiently because I wanted you to feel safe. Nothing is more important to me than your trust." "What?" She nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. She had lived through hardship, betrayal, and disappointment, but she realized that not all people were the same. Some could love without seeking control, without expecting anything in return. He was one of those rare people. From that day on, their bond deepened. He continued to support her quietly, offering help in ways that strengthened her independence rather than taking it away. She continued to trust him, allowing herself to rely on his presence and care without fear. Life was not perfect. Challenges continued to arise: school projects, illnesses, financial pressures. But now they faced them together. The strength she had always carried alone was now shared, and it made her life feel lighter, more hopeful, and full of love. One evening, as they sat together with the children playing nearby, he took her hand gently. "I want you to know," he said softly, "that I love you. Not for what you've been through, not for what I can give you, but for who you are, your courage, your love, your strength. And I want to be part of your life, not to change it, but to walk with you." She looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. For the first time in years, she felt completely safe to accept love without fear. She saw the honesty in his eyes, the patience in his heart, and the unwavering respect in his actions. "I love you too," she whispered. "Not because you helped me, not because of anything else, but because you see me for who I am and still choose to stand beside me." That moment marked the beginning of a new chapter, one built not on wealth, not on dramatic gestures, but on trust, respect, and genuine love. The children felt it too, sensing the warmth, safety, and care that surrounded them. Their home became a place of laughter, joy, and quiet happiness. He continued to support them, not as a savior, but as a partner. She continued to grow in confidence and happiness, knowing that someone truly respected her strength and valued her independence. Together, they faced life's challenges, celebrated its joys, and built a life based on patience, trust, and love. In the end, their story was not about riches or power. It was about understanding, resilience, and the quiet acts of love that change lives. He had fallen for her strength, as she had learned to trust and accept love in its purest form. Their life together became a testament to patience, respect, and the power of love built on understanding rather than need. The children thrived, their laughter filling the home, and she found a peace she had never known before. And in that ordinary yet extraordinary life, they discovered something rare: a love that was steady, kind, and unshakable. A love that could endure challenges, celebrate joys, and grow quietly but deeply in the hearts of all who shared it. It was a love that neither money nor circumstance could create, but one that grew naturally, humanly, and beautifully, the kind of love that lasts forever. Life settled into a rhythm that was both ordinary and extraordinary. Each day brought small joys and quiet challenges, and they learned to face them together. The man no longer felt like an outsider in her life. He had become part of her world, not through wealth or power, but through consistent care, patience, and respect. One morning, he arrived at her apartment with a small basket of fresh fruit and some bread. She smiled, recognizing the gesture, and the children ran to greet him. He knelt down to their level, laughing with them as they shared little stories about school, their friends, and the games they played. She watched quietly, feeling a warm calm she had not felt in years. There was no pretense, no pressure, just a genuine connection that had grown steadily over time. It was the first time she had allowed someone to be present in her life without suspicion or doubt. After breakfast, they decided to go to the market together. She held his hand lightly as they walked, feeling a sense of safety she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. She noticed how he interacted with people politely, respectfully, and without a sense of superiority. He helped carry the bags when needed, but never took over. He offered guidance when asked, but let her make the final decisions. The children followed close behind, chatting and laughing freely. She realized that he had become more than a presence in her life. He had become a gentle guide, someone her children could trust. Someone who made her life lighter without taking away her independence. Later that day, they returned home, and she found herself talking about things she had never shared with anyone. Her childhood memories, her fears about the future, and even her quiet dreams that had been tucked away for years. He listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging, only offering understanding. I never imagined telling someone these things would feel safe, she admitted softly. You deserve to be heard, he replied, and I want to hear you always. The simplicity of his words touched her deeply. It wasn't a promise of wealth, a grand gesture, or an unrealistic plan. It was a simple truth. He saw her, he respected her, and he wanted to be by her side. As the days turned into weeks, they faced challenges together that tested their patience and trust. The children had school events, minor illnesses, and moments of frustration that required both attention and care. She realized she could rely on him not to judge her or her children, but to offer support when it was needed. He never sought recognition for his actions. That made his presence even more meaningful. One evening, a sudden storm hit the city. The wind rattled windows and heavy rain fell in sheets. Her youngest child was scared, and she held them close, trying to calm their trembling. He arrived just in time, carrying an extra blanket and holding a lantern to provide light. He stayed quietly, offering comfort without intruding, letting her handle the situation while making sure she had support after the storm passed. They all sat together in the living room, wrapped in blankets. The children were asleep, exhausted from the excitement and fear of the storm. She looked at him and realized she didn't have to face every challenge alone anymore. She had someone who would stand beside her, quietly, without taking over, without judgment. Weeks later, they decided to spend a day at a nearby park. It wasn't planned or extravagant, just a simple outing. They packed sandwiches, drinks, and a blanket, and spent the day playing with the children. They ran, laughed, and shared stories. She watched him interact with the children, guiding, teaching, and encouraging them. Always with patience and kindness, she realized that he had become part of their family in a way that felt natural. The children didn't see him as an intruder or a stranger. They saw him as someone they could trust, someone who cared for them without expecting anything in return. That evening, as they returned home, she felt a deep sense of peace. Life had been hard, unpredictable, and often lonely, but now there was someone to share the weight of daily struggles. She felt seen, understood, and valued in a way she hadn't before. Over time, they began planning small projects together. Simple things like rearranging the children's study area, fixing up the apartment, or planting a small garden on the balcony. These were not grand gestures, but they were shared experiences that brought laughter, teamwork, and a sense of accomplishment. One afternoon, while arranging the garden, her eldest child asked him a question. "Why do you help us so much?" He paused and looked at the child, smiling gently. "Because I care, and because I want to be part of your life. I don't want anything in return. I just want to see you happy and safe." The child nodded thoughtfully, understanding more than words could express. She saw how genuine his actions were, how steady and reliable his care had become. As the months passed, their bond strengthened. She began to share more of herself with him, revealing dreams and hopes she had kept hidden. He listened, encouraged, and offered guidance when needed. Always respecting her choices and her independence, they celebrated small victories together: a good grade at school, a successful day at work, or a child learning a new skill. They faced disappointments together, comforting each other through challenges without blame or resentment. One quiet evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, she turned to him. "I never thought life could feel this balanced, safe, happy, and full of love," she said softly. He reached for her hand and held it gently. "It has always been possible. We just needed patience, trust, and care to find it." She realized then that love didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was built on respect, understanding, and the willingness to be present consistently. Through life's ups and downs, the children sensed the love and trust in their home. They laughed more freely, explored more confidently, and approached challenges with courage. Their home became a place of warmth, safety, and joy. And she felt a happiness she hadn't known since before her husband passed away. In quiet moments, she reflected on the journey that had brought them together. He had not entered her life to rescue her, and she had not waited for someone to solve her problems. Instead, they had built a relationship based on mutual respect, patience, and shared life experiences. He had shown her that love could be steady, gentle, and consistent. She had shown him that strength, courage, and dedication could inspire deep, genuine admiration. Together, they had created a life that honored both independence and connection. As seasons changed, their love grew stronger. They faced new challenges: school exams, minor accidents, and everyday stresses, but they faced them as a team. He continued to offer help without overstepping boundaries. She continued to trust and rely on him while maintaining her independence. They celebrated birthdays, school achievements, and small milestones together, each moment strengthening their bond. The children thrived in the warmth and stability of their home, feeling loved, supported, and safe. One evening, as they watched the stars from the balcony, she turned to him and whispered, "Thank you for being patient, for respecting me, and for loving us the way you do." He smiled, holding her hand. "Thank you for trusting me, for letting me be part of your life, and for showing me what true strength looks like." And in that moment, they both understood that their love was not about wealth, power, or grand gestures. It was about patience, respect, trust, and the quiet, consistent acts of care that made life meaningful. They had found something rare, a love that could withstand life's challenges, celebrate its joys, and grow quietly yet deeply in the hearts of all who shared it. Their home was full of laughter, warmth, and security. The children thrived, and they had built a life together that would endure. Not because it was perfect, but because it was human, real, and filled with genuine love. In the end, their story was not about riches or dramatic gestures. It was about the beauty of human connection, the power of patience, and the enduring strength of love built on understanding, respect, and shared life. They had found happiness not in what life gave them, but in how they faced it together, hand in hand, heart to heart.